It's true, I am a millennial. And I am here to introduce...
And that's okay.
And that's okay. Yeah. I hope that's okay for everyone. So my name's Jordyn Holman. I'm a reporter here at Bloomberg News. I write about diversity in the workforce and in the business world. And another reason they brought me up here is because I'm a millennial, like I said. But let me introduce our great panelists. First, we have Meredith Ferguson. She's the managing director at Do Something Strategic. And they give insight into young people's passions and how they take action. Then next to me is Dan Coates. He's the president of Ypulse, which does research on what's driving these young consumers' attitudes and what's shifting norms among the group. So let's get started. My first question is for you, Dan. So there's obviously a lot of stereotypes about millennials, but there's also some really hard, cold facts.
Right.
So they are now the largest demographic in the workforce. Some of them are running the most profitable companies in the US. But can you speak to me a little bit about how some of the cultural things have shaped the way that they think about financial decisions?
Sure. Well, and to understand millennials, you have to go back. You know, their parents were largely boomers. And the parents of boomers were largely the GI generation. So to truly understand millennials, you have to understand boomers. They had parents that said things like children should be seen but not heard, children should speak when they're spoken to, and they hated that. So they vowed that when they had children of their own, they were going to change everything. And so they were given messages of equality and of empowerment. Bridget made a point on the last session that I think is really true. These boomer mothers who had aspirations of independence and aspiration of equality made sure that they doubled down both on their sons and daughters to make sure that that vision would be realized. But certainly millennials have had a tough trajectory. We told them that if they could dream it, they could do it, that education was the answer to every problem, and then just as they were sort of emerging into the world, we pulled the rug out from underneath them with the Great Recession. So that's really shaped a lot of what they think about investing. They're great savers, by the way, great with money. They're just skittish investors and have very specific opinions as to what they want to invest in.
Right. Bloomberg News actually wrote a story similar to that with research about the Fed, saying that millennials do care a lot about the same things that their parents do. They're just poor. They don't have as much money. So Meredith, speak to me a little bit about how that balance happens with the engagement and wanting to put money towards things they care about, but maybe not having as much to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've seen a real shift in how they think about social impact and taking social action. And it's really sort of young people in general have really been the vanguard of using their dollars as a way to drive change. And so with respect to social impact and responsible investing, it really is about sort of appreciating that they have a new standard of expectations. And so they believe that, you know, their currency really is integrity and transparency. And they really feel very powerful about their ability as a community to drive change, and they're not afraid to sort of buck that status quo. And so really it's about appreciating that sort of social action, social good, using dollars for positive social change is really the way that they sort of create community among themselves, and they really can see an impact in doing that. And so impact investing, sort of tied into all of that, helps them use their money wisely in a way that they feel like is aligned with their values, in a way that just older generations haven't done. It's no secret that business is a big part of global challenges and what's existing out there right now. I think young people are the ones saying, and now it's our turn to do something about that.
Just to piggyback on that, in addition to them feeling like there's an important need for them to stand up and say something, they expect all the brands in their lives to do the same. And so whether it's Nike and Colin Kaepernick or Dick's Sporting Goods and firearms, you're seeing millennials expect more from the institutions that surround them.
So then how do those institutions or companies respond effectively to, how do they know what millennials will care about tomorrow?
Sure. I mean, the first thing that I would say is that, you know, an organization can't fake this kind of stuff. You either walk the walk or you don't. You're either authentic or you're not. And so what we're seeing is a lot of organizations that have authenticity, that sort of have this, they're made from whole cloth. They're rising amongst millennials. And we find that the ones where, if the mission statement is returning value to shareholders, that's not really what drives millennials day to day. They feel that they're on this planet to make the world a better place. And in every interaction, in every decision, in every investment, they expect to do that.
And just to build on that, honestly, that's probably the question we get the most at Do Something Strategic, which is, what do young people care about today? What do millennials care about? And we tell everybody, cause does not matter. Purpose matters, but the cause in and of itself doesn't matter. They'll care about anything as long as they feel like they know where their money is going, they know what's happening with the impact that they're expecting, and they feel like they're part of something bigger, that they see a real impact in their own contribution, whether that's through independent, individual action or collective action. And so truly, young people are cause agnostic. They'll care about anything. To be fair, majority of them feel like climate change is important. And that's no matter their political leanings, no matter their party affiliation. Climate change is important. Background checks for gun control, important. All of these issues still matter to them, but truly it can be any issue. They will take action on it as long as they see the sort of transparency of their impact.
And sometimes I feel like when we say millennial, it's just a large group. We don't think about the individual. But interesting stat is that 44% of millennials are non-white. It's a very diverse group. So when you guys are looking at the research and talking to investors and talking to people who are trying to understand this group, are you seeing a difference if it's a Black millennial or a woman versus Hispanic or white? Can you speak a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, it is very diverse. Moreover, we have all of these research puzzles where it's like, well, are they Hispanic or are they millennial? And the answer is they're both. The census long ago banned the sort of single ask when it came to race or ethnicity, and millennials kind of consider themselves more than just one thing. And anytime you sort of try to make them choose between, well, which is it? They'll defy you at every end. We find that actually multicultural millennials are really helpful in our research in that you don't think about language until you've learned a second language. So multicultural millennials, if you have any on your team, they're really good at saying, yeah, when you're in this environment, here's the rules of the game and here's how it works. When you're in that environment, here's the rules of the game and here's how it works. They've just got a greater sensitivity. If all you've ever spoken is English, you don't understand what a verb tense might be.
Yeah, and I mean, we can say that based on how young people take action on our platform, and we have 6 million young people that we track, I can tell you that there is no such thing as class warfare or urban-rural divide. What young people take action on, the issues that they care about, are pretty much the same no matter their socioeconomic status, no matter their race, no matter their even sort of some age cohorts, sort of 13 to 18 and then sort of 19 plus. So those things all sort of the same are the same. The one demographic split where we see significant sort of cause areas sort of taking action in certain areas and not others is gender. Certainly anyone who identifies as other, sort of that LGBTQ other gender, that they take action more heavily on equality-based issues. And young women and young men certainly differ in the cause areas that they take action on. But the rest is pretty much equal across the board.
And when you say they respond differently to cause, can you speak a little bit more about that? What does that mean?
It just means that when they decide what cause areas they're going to take action on or the types of action they're going to take, whether that's host an event or attend an event or make something or what have you, it's whether you're, the gender is the only thing that really drives the difference. So they'll take action, young men tend to take action more on education and environment than young women, who tend to take more action on equality and, and health related issues.
I just add one thing from the previous speakers. Women are the power gender of the millennial generation. I mean, they are more educated. Women have been 60% of college participation since about 1995 now. Just do the math, right?
I mean, I'm just going to say women are the power cohort of every generation as a non-millennial.
We've decided it.
Good point.
Okay.
But if you live on the island of Manhattan and you're under the age of 36, she out-earns him by about 10 cents. So listen, I'm not saying that we've reached equality or anything like that, but I mean, just do the math. Highly educated. One gender is higher educated than the other, and our economy is more and more driven towards information as opposed to things. and it's just inevitable.
So then now that we have all this data and insight, how do you actually have conversations with millennials about investing and to get them in the fold?
You know, one of the interesting things that I've done is have had a lot of cross-generational conversations. I've been parachuted into households of high net worth individuals to kind of bridge the gap between the sort of boomer, parent and the millennial child. And there are differences in the way they view the world, and there's a certain amount of friction. Like, I didn't work as hard as I did to earn this money so that you could then cast it to the winds or spend it on things that I don't believe in. Meanwhile, if you don't want me to do what I want with it, then don't give it to me. And there's this 30-some-odd+ trillion transfer that's in the works. So these are interesting issues, and what I would say is this: each generation has its own perspective based on its arc through history. You couldn't make your child think and act like a boomer because they weren't around in 1953 and 1954. You couldn't possibly give them the experiences that you had. And so, of course, their world is shaped by things like Columbine. I mean, you cannot get a millennial to invest in an arms manufacturer. There's just no way. They don't want to do it. School shootings have been a part of the fabric of their upbringing and has shaped their mindset, just as an Xer, duck and cover under a desk for nuclear warfare was part of my fabric. So definitely is the case that they're different. They do have different opinions on things. Neither's right or wrong. And it's just a matter of having conversations. And if you're a broker, if the first conversation you have with the millennial kid is over the casket, you've lost. So you really need to sort of engage with particularly high net worth families early. And I think Bridget and Jean would say, you better be talking to her first, but you better be talking to their kids pretty shortly thereafter.
And then I would add to that it's really all about the messaging. It's no longer sort of, issue the annual report and they feel comfortable with where their dollars have gone. So we talked about this a little earlier around the value of transparency. So it's really important for them to be able to see where their money is going and exactly what it's doing, exactly what it's impacting. And it's also, I would say, the other part of the messaging that's really, really important for millennials is to appreciate that the sort of idea of alarmism, like, oh my gosh, the world's going to end if we don't impact, if we don't do this kind of investment in the responsible impact world or the social impact world, is not going to work either. They really want to see the reality of it. And I would say shoot for 5 years out, not 50 years out. What is it really going to look like in the more immediate sense? And that's going to resonate way more deeply with young people and truly all people. I mean, I get this all the time. We want that too. Gen Xers sort of tweet at me and all that good stuff. As a fellow Gen Xer, I say, yeah, absolutely. But young people are the ones that are demanding it. We all embrace it. Sure, we all want to know where our money's going. We all want to see the impact in 5 years, not just 50. But young people, starting with millennials and certainly growing with Gen Z, they are the ones that are expecting it. So we're having to listen.
Yeah, it's all sort of a question of what's your benchmark or baseline. I think the banking system as it exists now is awesome. I lived at a time when if it wasn't after 10 a.m. on Monday or before 3 p.m. on Friday, if you ran out of money, you ran out of fun. For millennials, they think the current banking system sucks. They think it's awful. 60-page agreements that you have to read and sign. 44-step processes to open an account. Fees. So, they look at all these things and they think, wow, this is horrible. I mean, I think it's a vast improvement over what I first saw. But that being said, I would like a 4-step process and a 2-page agreement. That would be great too. But for them, it's just, their whole experience just starts much later as the system was much more evolved than what we were used to.
Right, and I think part of it is that technology has rapidly changed so much in a millennial's lifetime that they just expect faster and faster compared to, I have to be happy with this for now.
Yeah.
I'm on board with it.
Kiss of death for a broker. Tech up your environment. We see this across so many things. We helped Audi. Go into an Audi dealership. See how high-tech an Audi dealership is. They launched the A3 sedan with the millennial in mind. Millennials started showing up and seeing what kind of technology was in the dealership environment, turned around and walked away. If you seem like you're a dinosaur, you can be older. They're not ageist. But if you look low-tech, you're done.
And tech does not equal create an app. That is not tech.
Yeah. In the Audi experience, they walk out to you on the lot with an iPad. They show you a few things. They go into the dealership. They immediately start broadcasting that on a big screen TV. They're showing you things. I mean, it's definitely an interaction as opposed to a device or an object or an app.
Got it. And I think we have questions from the audience that people have been asking us. So let's get one of those.
Thanks, we do, Jordyn. How do we answer skeptics that say that millennial interest and purpose will erode as they age and inherit wealth?
We hear this all the time. Yeah, they're just going to be just like us as soon as they grow up and have kids and have families. No, nothing. I mean, we first started studying millennials 14 years ago. They were buying jeans and soda. I mean, you know, now they're making retirement investments and starting businesses. Everything that their core values haven't changed one bit. Your core values don't change over life. I'm still the jaded Xer from the Pacific Northwest I've always been, right? He keeps following me everywhere I go. Same thing with millennials. You know, what they value won't change over time. They're not going to revert to norm. Anybody that thinks that is putting on the happy years and hoping for the best, and just watch other companies pass you by.
Yeah, particularly when you see Gen Z sort of creating an even greater wave than millennials around social good and using dollars for positive social change. So I would say it's not going to turn around, and thankfully.
Yeah. Oh, and they may not cut cable anymore, right? Never. In fact, they're encouraging the rest of us to cut cable.
Are there any opportunities to develop investing solutions for non-college millennials who didn't go to college? Don't they make up a large amount of millennials still?
They make up almost 80% or around 80% of millennials in terms of four-year institutions. So yeah, absolutely you should be thinking about that. It's 18% of college-age students today go to a traditional four-year institution. 18%. Yeah. 40%
will inevitably, it's not happening on a four-year term, but will inevitably have a higher education degree. So 60%, a minimum, potentially 80%, are people who are definitely living within a budget. But I'll tell you this, more than 50% of millennials have a budget and stick to it. They're really good money managers. They save. 60% of millennials are currently saving for retirement right now. You know, it may not be a lot. If you saw the Wall Street Journal had an article on people who are planning on retiring by the age of 40 and how they're, you know, eating day-old bread and, you know, making some extreme sacrifices in their 20s so that they have the means to be able to retire in their 40s.
And the strategy is just accessibility. Make it accessible. Make it easy. I mean, that's really... Yeah. I mean, it shouldn't take a college degree and loads of money to be an impact investor.
Acorns,
so, yeah,
right? Betterment, you know, they're rolling up the spare change.
Stash is another one. Stash makes impact. They've built their whole platform on millennials who want to feel like they're an investor even if they only have $5. That's awesome.
What will cause millennials to begin investing more, or will they never invest at the same rate as their parents?
They're risk averse. Think about it. You know, they've seen in their short lifetimes the stock market cut in half, the housing market, you know, drop 30–40%. So you'll have to forgive them. They're a little bit cautious, and they get spooked very easily by the ups and downs of the marketplace. You know, Xers and Boomers think this is a wild ride and a lot of fun. Millennials think it's scary, and so I think just taking some of that fear factor out. Education's everything. The more they know, the more comfortable they feel. And the more they feel in control. If they feel like they're giving you their money and you're making all the decisions, they're never really going to be comfortable.
I mean, if I could wrap it up into one word, what would make young people, millennials in particular, feel comfortable? Transparency, period.
Yeah. If you think about it, they're following their food from field to fork. They know where their cow grew up, which farm, right? I mean, all these kind of blockchain technologies that allow them to see everything else in their lives as it winds its way towards their consumption. Same thing with investing.
What kind of research do you have on regional differences among millennial values, and how should financial advisors take that into account?
I can tell you from our research, regional does not come into play. Rural, urban, suburban, South, Pacific Northwest, those are not a factor when it comes to social impact and the action they want to take on various issues. They have it's all equal among young people. The only one is gender, the only demographic.
I disagree just a little bit with that. You know, we do more than just social cause stuff. You know, we're measuring politics and, you know, finances and lifestyle and whether you're having kids or not. There is a sort of a coastal versus, you know, flyover state differences in America in terms of behavior. Absolutely. Listen,
not when it comes to social impact.
Not when it comes to social impact.
Well,
sure.
That's the question.
Well, actually, when we talk about finances, I mean, we missed the Trump election by a mile amongst millennials. We followed up very diligently and said, hey, did you just not want to tell us who you were voting for? Or, you know, did you change your mind? you know, turns out there are some vastly different life experiences going on in other parts of the country that we, in our little New York bubble, weren't capturing. So, you know, we're very focused on capturing everybody in America and understanding how everyone in America thinks.
Without a doubt, and I mean, in our 6 million members, we're in every single area code in this country. So without a doubt, that's true in terms of, are there more people who identify as conservative or even Republicans if they don't choose a political affiliation, they consider themselves conservative? Sure, yes, more people in the South, without a doubt. But the plurality of young people today identify as moderates. The plurality of young people today identify as independents or unaffiliated, and not because they're apathetic, but because they're seeing that those platforms that represent those different ideologies, political ideologies or parties, are not necessarily consistent with them. Like I said, the majority, 83%, believe in responsible gun reform. And that's no matter their political affiliation or party identification. So those types of social impact issues, we don't see the same rural or you know, the sort of class divide or the flyover states versus coastal elites. That is not something we see at all with our 6 million people as part of our platform.
And it sounds like the definition of how we think about those categories needs to morph and change for this population. Like that intersectionality is really key.
Particularly key for Gen Z. 44% of millennials identify as a race other than white. That number is at 52% for Gen Z and only growing, right? Which is fantastic. So that shapes their lens. They really are seeing issues. The sort of young people today really see these issues as intersectional platforms. They understand that climate change is as much a race issue as it is an environmental one. So yeah, absolutely, intersectionality is a huge, huge element to how they view the world.
So that's important for all of us here to keep that lens on and to really think about millennials in a very broad way.
Yes.
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 That being said, the 17% that do disagree from the 83% plurality all live in the South and all hunt and fish. So there are some pockets, trust me.
Great. Well, I want to thank my panelists again. Thank you, Dan and Meredith, and thank you guys all.